Hello everyone, this is Ben over at ERP Connect, and in this video we are going to be reviewing our warehouse dashboard extension. So the first thing you'll need to do, as with all of our applications, is go out to App Source, search for warehouse dashboard, and go ahead and download it. After you've downloaded the extension, you can come up here to Warehouse Dashboard Setup and generate your demo key. This key will give you free access for 30 days, after which you can reach out to our team to purchase your yearly activation key, which you will enter here, and that will give you that extended version of our application. So once you've done those things, we can go ahead and jump right into some of this light configuration. It only takes about 3 or 4 minutes to get set up, and then you're rocking and rolling with our warehouse dashboard. So the first thing you'll want to do is set up the number of days for these item analytics. What this is going to do is indicate how far back you want the dashboards to look at your data when doing these analytics. Similarly, the period for shipment will indicate how far back you'd like to look at those shipment metrics. And then down here, we've got a few more configurations in the PO follow-up. So the PO follow-up will be used when you're on our purchase order tab in order to send follow-ups to vendors that you're expecting materials from. So here you can customize how you want that email to look, which we'll explore further when we actually get into the purchase order tab as part of our demo. And then we have this vendor returns multiplier. What this is going to do is it's going to determine how heavily the returns play into your vendor's score when we get into vendor performance. Again, the higher the number here, the greater the adverse effect the returns will play in that vendor score. And we'll again jump into that as we go through our demo. The final piece we want to jump up to up here is this user setup. So if I come up to user setup, you'll see myself and Grant here. Here you're just going to want to ensure that all the users who need to be able to view the dashboard are listed here. You can have their default view, which is going to be what they pop into when they open that dashboard each time. You can start the timer, do an automatic dashboard refresh, and then also add kind of a default dashboard date range, which will default when we go into the dashboards. You can also change that dynamically when we go in. And then you can also cycle, like we do with some of our other dashboards, between the different tabs, just on kind of an automated cycle that will kind of be driven off of these things right here. So with that, we are ready to dive into the live demo. And the first thing we're going to start with is our Shipments tab. So let's go to the WDB and we'll jump right in. All right, so the first of the 7 tabs we're going to focus on is this Shipments tab that we're seeing up on the screen. So immediately you can see some metrics across the top that are going to help us analyze our shipment volume and our shipment activity. The first 4 columns are going to show our total shipped value, total number of shipments, and total number of shipment lines for today, this week, this month, and this year. Then this 5th column is going to show us those same things, but be on a daily average for your shipments for this current year. So again, across the top here, you can see how much I've shipped today, this week, this month, this year, total value, total shipments, and total shipment lines. And then in this 5th column, we can see for this year, what are our daily averages. So on average, I'm shipping up about $3,000 worth of goods a day. That consists of 1 shipment per day and 1 shipment line per day. Again, as I analyze it across all of this, I can see those trends and how they're growing over those time periods. The next 2 down here, we're going to see number of shipment lines by date in year-to-date shipment lines just for the last 6 years. So the number of shipped lines shows you how many products you're sending out each day in order to get a better idea for that total volume. You can kind of see the spikes and the peaks and valleys here. You can also use the date toggles at the top to filter for different time periods. So if I wanted to just look at week to date, for example, I can click week to date and it's just going to show you what's happened over the last 7 days. I can look for the last 30 days, or I could look for the fiscal year to date, let's see, which is what I was showing previously. So a bunch of different things you can do there with the date toggles, but again, seeing kind of your shipment line performance over a trend period. The next chart is showing your year-to-date shipment trends. It's going to show how you're doing this year comparative to the same time period last year, the year before. Goes back 6 years. So again, through September right now, we've done 221 lines. Through through September of last year, we had done 691 lines. So again, just showing different metrics here in terms of trending and kind of analyzing your historical performance versus what you're doing today. Then if you want to look a little bit more granular into the last 12 months, we've got these graphs down here. So we can see how many shipments have been sent out for the trailing 12. That's what's going to be over here on the left. Then over here on the right, this is going to show again for the trailing 12, how many monthly shipment lines has that included. So if we look at August, for example, huge spike there. We did 85 shipments, and that consisted of 176 shipment lines. So again, just diving deeper into your warehouse trends on the shipping side. The last two things we're going to have here, and some of my personal favorites, include on average how many shipments and how many shipment lines are going out on each day of the week. So this can be especially helpful when looking at staffing needs. How many shipments are going out on average on each day. In this case, we can see that Tuesdays are definitely our busiest days. Maybe we need to use this information to be proactive and have more people in the warehouse on Tuesdays versus Thursdays, where it doesn't really look like we're shipping out as much. So just like with our other charts, we can also trend this via the shipment lines over here. So not only how many shipments are we doing a day, but how many lines does that consist of? So when it comes to our shipment trends for our warehouse dashboard, that is it. And the next thing up we're going to have is our purchase orders and our purchase receipt dashboards. So in this next chart, one of the first things you'll notice is the similarities to the shipments tab. So we're just going to kind of run through this one because a lot of the information is very similar. The first thing you'll see is that we can see how much has been received today, this week, this month, this year. And then again, similar to the shipments tab, we see that in terms of the total received value, how many receipts that makes up, and then how many total receipt lines for, again, today, this week, this month, or this year. Additionally, we can come down here now and see our total number of receipts, both the lines by date and the total receipt lines over the last 6 years. So similar to the shipments tab, we can go ahead and toggle these filters, month to date, last 30 days, last month, whatever you want to do here. Pick your different date parameters, and that will trend for this graph right here. And then again, over here, we're just seeing the total for the last 6 years, and that's all going to be year to date so that you can help monitor the performance and quickly see how much your purchases are growing by. So the last couple things we're going to come down to here is your total monthly receipts and receipt lines for the last 12 months. Again, if I look at August, we had 53 total receipts, whereas we had 176 total receipt lines that made up those 53 receipts. And finally, if we come down here, again, one of my favorites is the day of week receipts in the day of week receipt line. So we can see here that on Tuesdays is when most of our stuff is coming in, and we're having our warehousing and receiving team receiving those into the warehouse, whereas on Thursdays, maybe not as much. So this can again help adequately staff your warehouse on the busier days of the week. If we're doing things from a shipping and a receiving standpoint, mostly on Mondays and Tuesdays, maybe we need to have twice as many people in the warehouse versus Thursdays, where it doesn't seem that we're shipping out much or receiving much. So that's a wrap on the receipts tab of the warehouse dashboard. And the next thing that we're going to look at as our counts and adjustments. So on the counts and adjustments, this one's actually very simple but powerful. So we can quickly analyze how many cycle counts have been performed today, this week, this month, and this year, similar to what we were seeing before. This is really important for managers to track activities that are going on in the warehouse, making sure that cycle counts are occurring, and also monitoring the positive and negative adjustments that are going on. Of course, a big spike in positive or negative adjustments is definitely something that a warehouse manager would want to keep an eye on. And additionally, we have that distribution control center that makes managing these activities directly from your tablet or other handheld device extremely efficient, and we'd highly recommend checking those out if you're doing any sort of thing like this, or any sort of receiving and shipping like we talked about before. So again, the main focus here is to help monitor the cycle counts that are happening, making sure that people are doing their counts, and then if there's any adjustments, either negative or positive, that are kind of looking out of the ordinary, this can be a great indicator to go follow up and look at those things to see why. We also have some metrics like this on a few of our other dashboards, so I would highly recommend checking out our financial, sales, and history and statistics tools as well. Some of those can dive deeper into both our inventory information specifically here, as well as some of the other trends that we've been looking at. So with that, we are next going to jump into our inventory tab. So this is by far one of the biggest things we are seeing traction with right now from our warehouse dashboard, and for very good reasons, right? This can help you analyze your inventory stocking levels compared to your sales, telling you which items are overstocked, which items you don't have enough of, what is increased or decreased in activity over time. And ultimately, companies are using this as a health check to analyze the good, the bad, and the ugly of their inventory. So we've kind of found that Business Central didn't really have a one-stop shop to analyze this inventory effectively, and this was our attempt to do so. So let's run through some of the most important fields here. The first thing to mention is that all of these columns are sortable, filterable. You can export this to Excel, and you can even drill down into our history and statistics tool if you are also licensed to use that. So quickly, you can see here some basic information about your inventory, like the inventory or the item number, the description, the category, and the general product posting group. Then you can filter up and down right here by these different quantities. So if you wanted to see how much you've got on sales orders or purchase orders right now, again, I kind of mentioned that all of this is sortable. All of this is filterable. You can do filter to this value, kind of a bunch of different out-of-box Business Central functions here. Again, if you wanted to see what you've got the most available of, you could do so here. And then finally, this inventory value. If you want to see by value, not just quantity, what do you have in stock that's cost us the most money, right? So this is very important because you can run a quick kind of 80-20 analysis. Typically, in life, 80% of your sales are coming from 20% of those customers. Similarly, 80% of your sales or inventory is probably coming from 20% of those items. So if I filter this, you can quickly see that my top, 5 or 6 items here are making up a majority of my inventory valuation. I mentioned before that you can also open this in Excel if you'd like to do so here after it's sorted. Simply come over here and click this button. And then additionally, I mentioned that history and statistics piece if you want to drill down more into this one specific item to see more information on it. So with that, let's continue to scroll through this. And the next piece we'll dive into is the sales quantity, sales amount, last sales date as we come over here to the right. Now, not going to spend a ton of time diving in too deep, but again, you can quickly tell kind of what you're selling the most of in terms of quantity, what you're selling the most of in terms of sales amount, when the last time you sold any of these was. So again, can kind of use all 3 of those in conjunction with some of these other things over here to see how your item by item is kind of performing. And you can always come down here into this history and statistics if you want to get more granular on one item. Then on the flip side from the purchasing, we've got the purchase quantity. So see kind of how much you're purchasing in terms of dollars, and then when the last time you purchased that was. Again, you can kind of compare this from the sales to the purchasing side. So, if we're buying 50 of each of these and we bought them back in June, they weren't too expensive. So maybe not the end of the world, but we literally have never sold them, right? So why did we buy these? Where did the demand come from? And why are they sitting on that shelf now? And all of that now comes down to our profit amount and our profit percent, right? So profitability is obviously key and a huge driver of your business doing well. So you want to make sure that both the profit amount and the profit percentage are kind of aligning with what we just saw. So again, sort these high to low, see what your most profitable items are, both in terms of amount and percentage. And then as we continue to scroll over here, those will come into play as we look through some of our GMROI and TE index here at the very end. But before we get there, let's run through the rest of what you can see here. So quickly, you can see your annual sales quantities, your annual purchase quantities, again, all sortable. You can see your annual turns. So again, just how often are you turning that inventory over? We want that number to obviously be higher because it means we're selling it quicker and it has a higher velocity. The average age, how long are things sitting on the shelf from when we bought them? Average lead time, what's the average lead time for this item? So how long does it take to get? What's your day supply? Again, sort that high to low. So just how much inventory do you have based on your demand, 4,900. That means we have a ridiculous amount of inventory sitting on the shelf based on the current demand there that we've got. And then the day sales lead time ratio, again, kind of comparing how much you've got in terms of your day supply compared to the lead times that it takes to actually get those items. Next, we've got the vendor number. So who's the primary vendor that you're purchasing that item from? That's pulling from that item card. last count date. When was the last time you actually went through this inventory and did a cycle count on it? We're going to want to look here, more recent dates probably means more accurate data because we've more recently counted those and confirm that what it says here in Business Central's on the shelf is actually on that shelf. And then these final two, the GM ROI index and the TE index, definitely two really cool things that we've added here and two of my personal favorites. So kind of comparing the profitability of your inventory on hand to kind of what you're actually investing in and selling. And then the TE index is kind of combining both the inventory turns and how much you're earning on that inventory. So both of these things kind of being aligned, how much are you turning it over and how much are you selling? And then what's the actual profitability? So the bigger the number here, the bigger both of those are aligning. If some item is highly profitable, but you aren't really turning it over much, that would be lower. So really when kind of sorting on this, your highest turns and earns here should continue to be that Microsoft Surface 8 as we saw. And then that professional service, which was, since we don't have a loaded cost, that's just all pure profit, the system thinks, right? So again, very, very important metrics here that you can sort by and kind of analyze your inventory. But in terms of that inventory tab, that kind of wraps it up. And the next thing we're going to focus on over here is our vendors. So as we get into our vendors, the biggest thing here, if I scroll back over to the left, is just going to be some of the basic information to get started. So we got the vendor number, the name, the posting group, both the business posting group and the vendor posting group, who the purchaser is, and then how many items. They are kind of the primary vendor that you're purchasing it through. So the most important thing here is going to be how we measure our vendor's performance. So as we go through here, we can see what their balance is, what the current balance due is, the number of PO lines currently that we have for this vendor, the number of past due PO lines that we've got for this vendor, what's their lead time calculation. So just maybe it's 10 days as their actual calculation, but in reality, their average lead time is actually 11 or 35 days. So again, can compare those two things to each other. How much have we purchased in the prior 12 months versus the last 12 months and get a percentage difference. So are we trending up or down for this one vendor specifically? How many receipt lines do we currently have for this vendor? What's the total receipts quantity and returns quantity? Ultimately all getting us to that returns percentage, which I mentioned the key thing here that we're looking at is to analyze our vendor's performance. So as we continue to go through this, we'll see a performance score, which is ultimately going to show up on these grids down here. So how many returns, again, how many receipts are on time, what's their on-time delivery percentage, ultimately all getting down to a performance score. Higher number, the better, right? We want to have 100% performance score there. And then as we come down here, we can start to stack those up against each other. So the big factors, again, are going to be the on-time statistics and the return statistics. So if we look here first, we can see who our top vendors are performance-wise by on-time delivery. So who typically delivers our stuff on time. That's typically a good metric, and we want to get our stuff on time so that we can then get it out to our customers on time. Over here, we've got our vendor, bottom vendor performance based on returns. So who's returning, who's having us return the most stuff as a vendor, right? So in this case, AG Advisors, not doing too hot. We're returning 15.63% of what we get back to them, which obviously isn't good for us to our customers. So we want to analyze, who's good, who's bad, and then we want to come down here and kind of go off that total vendor performance score, right? So it's combining returns and it's combining the on-time component. So we can see here, we've got a lot of vendors who are at that 100 mark. That's great. This vendor 110 down there is at a 98. So again, still pretty good in my book. They might have slipped up one time and had a return, maybe something minor, or been late just by a day or two. So again, nothing too terrible there. But then if we look down again at vendor 30 AG, not doing too hot there, right? Our vendor performance score is very low. And then this is just going to be that bottom vendor. So it's just flipping the grid. If you had a lot more vendors, this grid would look a bit different. And then this would kind of show you who you really need to follow up with in terms of seeing some improvements in terms of their vendor performance and their delivery. But again, overall, this is hyper-focused on that vendor performance. So with that, we're going to hop over to our last two, the first one being sales orders. So now if I look at my sales orders here, this is quickly going to show us our volume by dimension 1 and 2. Mine are customer and employee, customer over here on the left, employee over on the right. And these are actually coming from our auto create dimensions tool. So I can automatically always keep those in sync. Anytime I create a new customer, it's creating a new dimension and linking it back. Definitely would recommend checking that tool out if you haven't already. But what this is showing is kind of those details for our released sales order. So quickly see kind of dimensionally what your volume is, and then also down here see a more granular grid, right? So every sales order, how many lines are on that sales order? Are there any items that we don't currently have in stock that we need? So this is going to show us our items short, any warehouse instructions, who the customer, both the billing customer and the sell to customer, the shipping advice, agents, all that kind of good stuff. And you can drill down into this. The black is going to mean you're good. It means the shipment date hasn't been reached yet. Red, no bolds, means that the shipment date's today. And then dark red means that the shipment date was prior to today. So those are definitely things that you're going to want to jump on and make sure that they get out, because anything that's bold and red here could provide a negative impact for your customer. And definitely we want to keep those customers happy. So quick way, very easy way to see our sales orders activities and kind of analyze what needs to be looked at based on some of these color codings, right? So the last thing with that is the purchase orders. It's going to look very similar. Here we're looking at our released purchase orders, and mostly the same color scheme applies. So the red's going to mean it's a stock order and there's really no demand for it yet. The PO has not been received and there's no sales orders really waiting on it, but it is past its receipt date. The dark red in this case, though, is going to mean that it is past due and you have sales orders that are waiting on these receipts. So definitely want to check out those dark reds. And then black just means that the expected receipt date has not hit yet. So you're all good to go from there. Again, just kind of trying to quickly analyze what's late and quickly identify what's needed for stock orders versus what needs to actually be fulfilled for customer orders. The other thing you can do here, which we didn't see before because this is unique to the PO dashboard, is come up, click here, and click this send follow-up selected. So I'm actually going to send that real quick, and I'll show you exactly what it does. So I'm just going to say, are you sure you want to follow up with this vendor, right? This vendor is now late. We have not received the items they told us that they were going to send us, and they're late, and we've got sales orders waiting on these items. So quickly, I'll show you what this is going to look like. I'll pull the email over. When you click that button, it's going to send your vendor an email. Hey, attention, vendor name. We've issued a purchase orders that passed the receipt date. Please reach out immediately, blah, blah, blah. You set this all up on the warehouse dashboard setup that we saw earlier. You can define the email subject and the email body. And then here, it's actually going to show you all of the items that are on that purchase order that are late. So you don't really have to do anything. You just click a button. It's going to send it out to your vendor, and they can get that and be like, oh, yep, I need to send that 1024 parts and pieces. This is the document number. This is how many they had on the quantity. And their requested receipt date was all the way back in July, right? So hopefully this kind of gets your vendor to look at those things and take action on them so that you can actually get them on time. So that just about wraps us up end to end on the walkthrough for the warehouse dashboard. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to anyone on our team. We would highly recommend that you subscribe to our YouTube channel here for real-time updates when new content is published, and would highly recommend checking out our other 20 plus tools that are currently in our Business Central toolbox. I hope everyone has a great day, and we appreciate you tuning in to learn more about our warehouse dashboard. Thanks, everybody.